Our country is home to some of the most beautiful, God-given landscapes in the world. We're blessed with natural treasures, from the Grand Tetons to the Grand Canyon, from lush forests and vast deserts to lakes and rivers teeming with wildlife. And it's our responsibility to protect these treasures for future generations, just as previous generations protected them for us.
In this historic year of the centennial of the National Park Service, we celebrate our national parks and honor the caretakers of some of the most iconic natural treasures in the world. By preserving parks today and creating park stewards for tomorrow, National Park Trust is protecting these landscapes and historical and cultural sites for this generation and future generations.
Since 1983, NPT has completed more than 100 land acquisition and preservation projects in 33 states, Washington, D.C., and the U.S. Virgin Islands. Our projects range from the acquisition of 11,000 acres for the establishment of the Tallgrass Prairie National Preserve in Kansas, to 30 acres at Indiana Dunes National Lakeshore on the shores of Lake Michigan.
From the preservation of habitat for the endangered desert tortoise at Mojave National Preserve in California, to historic Fort Stevens in Rock Creek Park in Washington, D.C., and from our work to protect the viewshed of the C&O Canal National Historic Site in Maryland, to the birthplace of Martin Luther King in Georgia.
In honor of the centennial of the National Park Service, NPT is now focusing on 100 high-priority land acquisition projects located inside the boundaries of our national parks.
From California to Colorado, to Maine to Alaska, these parcels will benefit more than 40 national park units in all 7 geographic regions. Projects that have little chance of receiving federal funding for their purchase.
But NPT is not just about acquiring land. Stewardship is essential to preserving our parks now and for the next 100 years. If the next generation doesn't love the out-of-doors and value our parks, then these national treasures are at risk. Yet, in the 21st century, children spend less and less time in nature.
National Park Trust's Buddy Bison School program is reversing this trend by providing access to our parks for thousands of students each year. Selected by the National Park Service as a Centennial Challenge project, the Buddy Bison program has expanded this year to include schools in Houston, Chicago, St. Louis, Washington, D.C., San Francisco, and Atlanta, totaling 50 Title I schools this year.
Since 2009, more than 30,000 students from underserved communities have traveled to their local, state, and national parks, public lands, and waters, where they have used parks as outdoor classrooms to enhance their science and history curricula, learned about park stewardship, and about the benefits of outdoor recreation.
And in honor of the centennial, we have committed to expanding our Buddy Bison program to 100 schools around the country.
Furthermore, since 2011, Kids to Parks Day, a nationwide day of play, has engaged an additional 2 million kids and their families across the country with their local parks and public lands.
On May 21st, MPT celebrated the 6th annual Kids to Parks Day with more than 700,000 participants at 1,137 parks in every state and Washington, D.C.
More than 400 cities and towns representing all 50 states and the District of Columbia and 23 governors proclaimed the day, and a Senate resolution was passed.
National Park Service Centennial Challenge funds also provided matched resources for our Kids to Parks Day school contest, benefiting 4,400 students in grade pre-K through 12th grade. And all because kids need parks, and parks need kids.
16 years ago, the National Park Trust established the Bruce F. Vento Public Service Award to honor the memory and legacy of Bruce Vento, a 12-term congressman from Minnesota and a champion for our nation's parks. A former science teacher, Bruce was the chair of the Natural Resources Committee's Subcommittee on National Parks, Forests, and Public Lands. As the subcommittee chair, Bruce passed more park legislation than any other previous chair. Each of the 16 recipients has been recognized for their lifelong passion and commitment to protect our parks, America's heritage.
This year, we are honored to recognize Congresswoman Betty McCollum. Congresswoman McCollum is serving her 8th term in the United States House of Representatives. She represents Minnesota's 4th District, the same seat previously held by Congressman Vento. In 2000, Congresswoman McCollum made history as just the 2nd Minnesota woman elected to serve in Congress since statehood in 1858. Her district includes Minnesota's capital city, St. Paul. It is bordered by the Mississippi River and the St. Croix River, both parts of the National Park System.
Congresswoman McCollum is a member of the House Appropriations Committee, where she serves as the ranking Democrat on the Interior Environment Subcommittee and is a member of the Defense and Legislative Branch subcommittees. Last year, Congresswoman McCollum worked to secure a major federal investment in the National Park Service Centennial Challenge. The challenge has leveraged $25 million in federal appropriations with more than $45 million in matching funds from partner organizations across the country, including the National Park Trust, to reinvigorate national parks and forge connections to new communities in honor of the 100th anniversary of the National Park Service.
In addition, Congresswoman McCollum worked to reauthorize and secure a substantial investment in the Land and Water Conservation Fund. Congresswoman McCollum has also been a longtime proponent of policies that have led to the conservation and recovery of threatened areas. This includes fighting to safeguard the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge from harmful development, restoring the flow of clean water to Florida's Everglades, and opposing attempts to initiate mining projects near the Grand Canyon.
Closer to home, she has been a leading advocate for Minnesota's most treasured spaces, the Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness and Voyageurs National Park.
Finally, in the spirit of Congressman Vento, Congresswoman McCollum has worked to deepen the connection between young people and our country's most valued natural and historic spaces.
This is a perfect choice because she was close to Bruce. She's carried on in the spirit of his leadership. It's nice to have them both before us to remember the greatness that we've been able to achieve through them. I salute her for all of these things, and we celebrate the wonderful career of our Congresswoman through this special award.
Franklin Delano Roosevelt stated, "There is nothing so American as our national parks. The scenery and the wildlife are native. The fundamental idea behind the parks is native. It is, in brief, that the country belongs to the people for the enrichment of the lives of all of us." Thank you, Congresswoman McCollum, for your dedication and lifelong commitment to protect our parks, public lands, and waters for the enrichment of all of us, now and for the next 100 years.